As a registered dietitian, I can't tell you how many conversations where I've sat across the table from someone and watched them just absolutely beat themselves up and crumble into a pile of tears. And we all know that we should treat ourselves better. That's great in theory, but if you do struggle with negative self-talk, or maybe you're a coach and you work with clients who have a really negative inner script, I want to give you an exercise you can try in your own life to break that bad habit. So what are the three voices? We're going to talk about it in just a second. Hi and welcome. I'm Jennifer Broxterman, registered dietitian. Today I wanted to introduce an exercise called the three voices. Even though it has nothing to do about the food that we put into our bodies, it is probably one of the single most important exercises I do with my own nutrition clients, or when the coaches that I certify inside of Prosper Nutrition Coaching. This is one of the main exercises they walk away from the cert and they're like, this transformed the relationships my clients were having with food. And so I want to start with three words, and we actually have them hanging on our office wall in my private practice. But those three words are to be curious, to be kind, and to be honest. If we can broach this subject with curiosity, kindness, and honesty, it's going to make a huge difference in your own lives or the lives of people that you coach. So the three voices are our inner bully. We have a more neutral voice that I like to call the curious detective. And then we have a wise and caring voice. Sometimes this voice is a little bit muted or quiet. And this final voice I've given the name of our wise guide. So let's start with voice number one, which is the inner bully. You might think of this as the food police. You might think of this, if you've struggled with disordered eating, as like Ed or, the ED monster. Sometimes you might even want to give it an actual name. Like, apologies to the Nancys out there, but like, there goes negative Nancy one more time ripping into me. But what we want to do is we want to externalize the voice and know that it is not you. This is just a voice that has maybe been popped into your head from societal pressures. Maybe it was something that you learned as a young child from a family member making negative comments. Maybe it actually started with some bullying in your childhood or your past, and you started to really take that to heart and replayed that conversation over and over. Whether it came from something you can attribute to, or you don't even know where this voice came from, I think it helps to share in our humanity that we all have an inner bully. So let's just start by noticing and naming it. What are things that the inner bully might say? It might say things like, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe you just devoured that row of cookies. What have you done? That's disgusting. Don't you have any self-control?" Maybe it makes fun of your weight, or your shape, or your appearance, or that clothes aren't fitting the way that you want. That inner bully sneakily often will do things when you look at social media, and it can get you caught in the comparison trap. And if you've ever heard the phrase, compare and despair, you know what I'm talking about. We all have a bully. So as opposed to believing everything that our bully says, what can be really helpful with this exercise of the three voices is to just stop and notice a name. There's the bully making fun of my appearance again. There's the bully making me feel self-conscious because I've broken out and I have a little bit of acne on my face. There's the bully that's telling me I'm not good enough. Doesn't mean I have to believe it, but pretending being like la 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 la, the bully doesn't exist, that actually doesn't help because that bully voice is there for many of us. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna call in two allies and friends to help us out when the inner bully gets noisy. So our two friends that are gonna join Team Us are our curious detective and our wise guide. So our curious detective is the second voice. This voice is neutral. Think of it like a really good Sherlock Holmes. It goes around with a little notepad and it just looks for observations, patterns, and clues, but without any judgment attached to the observation. So for instance, it might notice that on days that I don't pack a lunch and I'm kind of left in the lurches around midday, I might, if I'm feeling tight on time, hit the McDonald's drive-thru because I don't know what to eat for lunch and I know I can get in and out really quickly. Or maybe it notices that this new low carb way of eating that you've trialed because you heard good things online is making you a little bit moodier and crankier. And even though you can hold on till dinner, suddenly you're into the chocolate and the ice cream and the chips at night. And you're like, oh, what's wrong with me? Why don't I have more self-control? Oops, that's the bully. We're gonna silence the bully, and we're just gonna notice patterns. I notice when I eat low carb all day, I really crave crackers and chips at night. Okay, there's a pattern, there's an observation. You might notice that when you get really, really overworked and you're on a deadline with a project, you might notice that you stress eat a lot more. And maybe you buy more, I don't know, mini eggs or cookies or whatever the case might be to get you through. So we are not judging any of these behaviors. Our detective is just gathering clues and writing them down in a notebook. And now here is the big secret of the 3 voices. Once we have our clues collected, there's 2 people we can hand it off to. We can give it to our inner bully, who's gonna mentally beat us up and make us feel horrible. Let's not do that. Instead, if we can take that notepad of clues, we're gonna hand it to our other ally, who's on Team Us. And that final ally is what I like to call our wise guide. Not wise guy, wise guide. So think of a wise guide like someone that is responsible for caring for us and our long-term best interests. So it's like a best friend, but there's almost an element of responsibility that we bring in with the wise guide. The wise guide does a couple of things. It is thinking about our long-term goals and what we want for ourselves over the long run. So it's always kind of holding that best, healthiest, happiest version of us in the forefront of its mind. But the other thing that the wise guide is really great at is I like to call this solution-oriented thinking, or basically it's a great problem solver. So it is not pie in the sky idealistic. What it tries to do is really get to know who you are as a person, what season of life you're in, what challenges and barriers are you up against, what areas of support and opportunity can you take advantage of. And so your wise guide, kind of like a wise mentor, is taking all of this information in, plus the clues from your curious detective, and it's basically trying to give you a day-to-day plan that allows you to show up for yourself with your healthy interests at heart. So it might notice, again, with your curious detective, that you've got a crazy deadline coming up, and instead of making you feel bad that you're maybe eating out a little bit more, it might come up with a few great options of quick things you can purchase quickly. It might say, if I have to work till 9 o'clock, I can quickly run out and grab a healthy sub and load it up with vegetables and buy some bagged or ready to go salads and make a meal of that when I come home because I know I'm not gonna have the energy to cook. Or it might look ahead to your calendar and go, I'm an accountant and man, oh man, do I have a busy tax season coming up. Maybe I should protect a Saturday or Sunday in February so then that way I can do some batch cooking and load that in the freezer for when things are getting increasingly busy. Maybe it notices that you're exhausted and what you just need is a hot shower and an early bedtime because otherwise you're prone to stress eating. Maybe it knows that your anxiety has been really bad lately and maybe it's been a while since you've checked in with a mental health counselor, and it might remind you that you always feel better even though that's a hard step to take, and that might actually serve you more than trying to find your feelings or bury your feelings in the bottom of a bag of chips. So our wise guide is looking for the opportunities to care for us. So I want you to give this a try for yourself. See if you can go through a day and notice who's in the driver's seat of the car. So I think of this like a road trip through life. There's 3 people, the 3 amigos in the car, although one of them isn't quite the amigo, and luckily we can gang up 2 on 1. So ideally, if that bully's starting to get noisy and strong, let's have our wise guide and our curious detective sort of wrestle the inner bully away from the steering wheel. We don't want them driving the car and calling the shots. So we're gonna try to put them in the back seat, maybe even, tape them up and put them in the trunk, or exit them at the next stop and say, you are not invited on this road trip of life. And so as much as we can, if we can go through our days, like I said, with those 3 words, being curious, being kind to ourselves, but we also need that honesty, which is why we need our curious detective to kind of face the facts with a dose of reality and no inner judgment. And it is amazing how your relationship with yourself, your health, your relationship with food can transform. So I'll leave you with this final thought. People think that willpower and being tough on themselves is the way to achieve a goal. But what research actually shows is that the people who are hardest on themselves stop and start more frequently because they tend to be very all or nothing. What we know about people who really execute with a lot more consistency is they have a much more self-compassionate voice. And they know that one step backwards doesn't mean that all their hard work is undone. They just dust themselves off. They maybe gather the clues, they learn from that situation, they look at the facts. And then if you can navigate that skill of giving the clues over to your wise guide, what you want to do is not think of the most ideal solution. You want to actually think of the most realistic solution for you. So maybe there's a week where you just can't get to the gym at all, but can you go for a walk once or twice, or take a longer hike on the weekend, or do some, push-ups and air squats for 5 minutes or 1 minute. It doesn't have to be perfect. Better is better, forward is forward. So if you're a client and you're looking for some help with this is what we love to do at Nutrition RX. We look at the intersection of how we fuel ourselves with nourishing whole foods, but also building a supportive environment where the healthy choice is the easy choice. But also so much of our coaching goes into the mindset and the self-talk. So if we can help you, we would love to either work with you one-on-one in one of our packages or through Powerful Progress. I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you for hanging out with me as I have a cup of tea today, and I hope you can keep the 3 voices in mind when your own inner bully starts to get really noisy. I'm Jennifer Broxterman, registered dietitian.